Hello, everyone. Welcome to Carnatic Muse, a podcast where we delve a little bit deeper into the beautiful field of Carnatic music. Today, I am so excited to kick off our Carnatic Chats series, and today we will be interviewing Akshay Aravindan, the co-founder of AKRUTHI Performing Arts. Akshay, we are thrilled to have you on the podcast. I'd like to start off by hearing about your musical background, what got you into music, and how long have you been doing this?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on the podcast, by the way. I'm currently a software engineer working at Microsoft. I started my musical journey at age 6, and within about 5 years, I started accompanying as a mridangamist for Carnatic music. I continued doing this up to around when I graduated high school, and then I transitioned to kind of primarily accompanying for Bharatanatyam dance. Currently, I do a little bit of both, and I love doing both of them.
That's amazing. So what keeps you in love with the field?
Absolutely. I think if I had to say one thing, it's my love for music, right? A lot of people kind of say that I'm always humming. I have elevator music running in my head. And beyond just love of music, I think most people that are kind of listening to this have a love of music. I think beyond just that, I have a love of rhythm. So a lot of times I'll kind of be tapping my pencil against the desk or kind of moving my feet to the beat of whatever song is what I'm listening to. So that's kind of why I just love this field. I'm always going to be in this field. And yeah.
So you mentioned that your primary instrument is the mridangam. Would you be able to explain to our audience here what that is and talk us through some of the basics?
Yeah. So mridangam kind of has a language of its own. It has letters, it has phrases, it has paragraphs, and on top of all of that, it kind of has a tempo behind everything. So let's kind of dive into each 4 of those categories. Letters. You have a whole alphabet of letters. A couple examples are ta, di, dom, nam, tam, ki, da. There's quite a few more, but those are kind of some of the basic ones. There are phrases. Some of the phrases that you'd very, very commonly see are kita taka, or tari kita, or digutari kita taka. That's kind of a combination of the kita taka and another phrase, digutari. And both of those phrases create one longer phrase. Then you have paragraphs. These are what we call korves in our language. You usually have 2 parts of these paragraphs. The first part is a purvangam. Here is where you kind of can let your creativity just go crazy, right? You have some kind of set pattern, usually patterns of 3. So I can do one example for you. De tangida de gitara gita de gadinta chum gita de gita tangida de gitara gita de gadinta chum gita de gitara gita tangida de gitara gita de gadinta chum. So if you notice there were 3 patterns. The first one was de tangida de gitara gita de gadinta chum. The second one was gita de gita tangida de gitara gita de gadinta chum. And the third one was gita de gitara gita tangida de gitara gita de gadinta chum. And then the uttarangam is where you get maybe a little bit less creativity, but this is where you have these set patterns that are very, very commonly known in the mridangam language. So this is tadinginatom is the bass, and that is 5 notes, right? You can also do patterns of 6, tadinginatom, patterns of 7, tadinginatom, patterns of 8, tadinginatom, and patterns of 9, ta, ding, gi, na, tom. And so one very, very common phrase is ta, ding, gi, na, tom, ta, ding, gi, na, tom, ta, ding, gi, na, tom, which kind of just combines 3 5s. And when we talk about the last one, there are tempo changes that you can do. This is what we call kalam. So you can do kind of like, as we saw in the beginning, where I kind of did a faster pace, and then in the second half, I did a slower pace. You have that kind of dichotomy there. And you also have a couple of different kalam changes where you can do patterns of 3, patterns of 5, patterns of 7, right? So one of the examples that I'm kind of going to show you here is very similar to the utrangam that I said before. Tadinginnatum, tadinginnatum, tadinginnatum. Now, I can do that in 4s, I can do that in 3s, and I can do that in 5s. And I could even combine all 3 of them. So another very common one that you'll hear is, a very common utrangam that is tadinginnatum, 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 tadinginnatum tam. So that's kind of the language of mridangam, and hopefully that kind of gives everyone a good idea of the basics.
Thank you so much. That was so informative, and I just learned so much there. So could you tell me a little bit, you mentioned that you play mridangam for dancers as well as singers. And I'm specifically thinking about Bharatanatyam versus Carnatic music. Could you talk through, when you're approaching, for example, you set up these skorves and purvangams and utrangams. What are some of the differences when you play for Carnatic music versus for dance?
Yeah. When I'm playing for a singer, for some kind of Carnatic music, usually the song is split up into 3 parts. I think your audience would be very familiar with this, the pallavi, the anupallavi, and the charnam. Between each of those, the mridangam kind of gets this little bit of time to shine, right? Or so I call it, where you have about 8 beats to kind of do whatever you want, kind of have a finishing pattern, so that when the singers pick up, it's kind of like there was a nice finish, and the pickup starts again. As well as that, you have usually in a singing concert, you always have an opportunity for the mridangam to showcase their talent, and that's called a taniyavartanam. A taniyavartanam you can think of as maybe an essay, right, where you're combining a lot of different paragraphs. You're combining korves. You're doing multiple different tempo changes, right? And at the very end of these taniyavartanams, you usually have what we call a mora korve. These are just designed to kind of end these very, very long taniyavartanams. And when I say very long, I mean usually between 5 to 15 minutes. And that's kind of how accompanying for singers kind of works. When it comes to dance, it's a little bit different. You don't kind of get that freedom with the taniyavartanam, things like that, because obviously the dancer is a star of the show. So you primarily are following based on kind of what the dancer's feet are doing, right? In addition to that, I think one of the main parts is they have jatis, where that's kind of when the dancer's feet are moving in patterns of 3, patterns of 4, patterns of 5, right? And so as a mridangamist, that's kind of where we have to focus, right? Because we're kind of facilitating those patterns. We're making sure those patterns are falling on the right beats. And so we're kind of the key in a lot of those jatis.
That's incredible. And then last but not least, I did actually want to ask, you have a lot of experience in both sides and both worlds. Do you have any advice for, young mridangists who are starting out, who are looking to kind of break into these fields? What advice would you give them?
Absolutely. I think I would just say, just keep working on it, right? There's going to be a lot of times when you're going to make mistakes, especially when you're on stage in front of a big group of people. It's going to be embarrassing to make these kinds of mistakes, right? But the thing is, as long as you're constantly growing, as long as you're learning from those mistakes, you're making sure that even when it's hard, you're putting 100% effort into every single program, to every single beat that you're playing, right? As long as you're staying with it and you're making sure that you're doing the best you can, I really think that's all the advice I can give.
Yeah, and honestly, just to echo that, just follow your heart, stay true to the reason you got into it is because you fell in love with it, and just always keep that as your North Star. So, well, that's all the questions I had for you. Again, thank you so much. This was such an informative, fun chat. And to all of you, if you have any questions for Akshay, or if you'd like to reach out to him, where can we find you?
Absolutely. Obviously, the AKRUTHI site is one of the great resources that you can reach out. You can kind of see a little bit of our work there. Um, Also, you can reach out to me at my email, akshayaravindan@gmail.com. And again, you can find my full name on the AKRUTHI website.
All right. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.